Recently, ComfyUI quietly released 2 new models. Now, these models don't actually feature brand new technology. They are the Infinite Talk models we are quite familiar with, capable of generating infinitely long lip-synced videos. The versions we used previously were mostly from Kijai, but Kijai's version still had some issues regarding generation quality and speed. So, what is different about these 2 official versions? To help everyone intuitively understand this technology, I have generated 4 videos. There are 2 dual-person clips and 2 single-person clips. Simultaneously, I have included 2 languages, one in Chinese and one in English. First, let's take a look at the effect of the dual-person English version.
Hey, you dropped your, calculus notebook?
Oh wow, my mortal enemy Mr. Thompson's problem set.
Next, let's listen to the effect of the dual-person Chinese version.
小弟弟，有兴趣陪姐姐喝一杯吗？
我其实不太会喝酒。
Now, let's listen to the single-person English version.
Okay, yeah. I resent you. I love you. I respect you. But you know what? You blew it. And thanks to you.
And finally, the effect of the single-person Chinese version.
我跟我闺蜜看电影就特别有画面感，就你知道吗？一紧张我就忍不住吃爆米花，吃得特别快。
Although you saw 4 videos, there are actually only 2 workflows, one for the single-person version and one for the multi-person version. The only difference between them is the language we selected. I have built the workflow on Running Hub, and you can access the platform through runninghub.ai in the ComfyUI field. Running Hub is a fantastic online workbench because whenever new models or extensions appear, they follow up immediately. You can register for Running Hub using the invitation link in my video description to get 1,000 free credits. Additionally, logging in daily gives you 100 bonus credits, so you can try out your own workflows. Now, let's look at the single-person workflow. First, regarding the download of all models, there is a note on the left side. You can take a look. All the models used in this workflow can be downloaded via the links in this note. There is also a diagram showing the local storage path. Let's look at the structure of the workflow. Please note the workflow consists of 2 parts. The first is basic sampling, which generates the first segment of the video. Then comes the extension. How many times you extend depends entirely on you. Since I have an audio clip that is nearly 8 seconds long, I need to extend it twice. This results in the structure you see now. Let's look at the workflow in detail. First is the main model loading. Note that the main model we are using now is the Wan2.1 image-to-video 14B model provided by Kijai. Then we use an acceleration LoRA, which still comes from Kijai below, that is our model patch. I need to mention this, after you download these 2 models, they need to be placed in the model patches directory inside your models folder. So please don't place them randomly. They are not standard models, but model patches. Further down is an audio encoder, which is also provided by Kijai. You can place it in your audio encoder folder. You should be quite familiar with the text encoder and VAE for Wan2.1 by now. Next, let's look at the audio processing. Since this is a single person, the processing is quite simple. Let's listen to this audio clip. It is 7 seconds long.
我跟我闺蜜看电影就特别有画面感，就你知道吗？一紧张我就忍不住吃爆米花，吃得特别快。
Below that, we have an image. This image is a close-up shot of a girl. Note that it has a very realistic feel. Next, we configure some basic parameters. First, the width and height. We are using 832 by 480 below. We need to encode the audio first using audio encode. In the prompt, we emphasized a zoom-in effect and specified that a character is speaking. Since we are using an acceleration model, the CFG has no effect. For the negative prompt, we just used a conditioning 0 out. This is the most important node in our entire workflow, Wan Infinite Talk to video. Here we first pass the model Wan2.1, then our patch. The patch passed here is our infinite single-person version patch. Then comes the positive condition, negative condition, Virginia E, and our audio encoding. This input here is the reference image we just passed. Since it is a single person, we don't need to pass a mask. Also, we don't need to pass parameters for a second speaker. For the mode, you can select either 2 speakers or 1 speaker. It works either way. Actually, there isn't much difference. If you want to save trouble, just selecting 2 speakers works fine, even for a single person. For the video length, we set it to 81 frames. Note that this length is only for generating the base video, because as we mentioned, there are extensions later. Then pay attention to motion frame count. This refers to using the first few frames as a motion reference. The official recommendation is 9 frames, so just set it according to that. For sound scale, we gave it 1.0. Next, we enter the sampling stage. We use a custom sampler. The CFG is set to 1.0 because we use the acceleration model. The random seed sampler is Euler, and for the scheduler, we use normal. Just 4 steps can generate excellent results. At this point, you will get the first segment of the video. Of course, this isn't complete. It only contains a part of the audio. Let's listen.
我跟我闺蜜看电影就特别有画面感。
Next, we move to the second part, extension. The extension is basically the same as the previous part. The only difference is right here, previous frames. Since we are extending based on the previous video, we must pass the previously generated video into previous frames. Everything else is largely the same, but there is one distinct feature here called trim images, the number of images to cut off. Note that this option doesn't exist in the section above because the basic sampling phase doesn't involve image stitching. So how do we use it? Note that after decoding our generated image, we first chop off the previous frames at the beginning. How much do we chop? That is specified by this value. After that, we connect the previous video with this current video, creating the second segment. Let's listen.
我跟我闺蜜看电影就特别有画面感，就你知道吗？一紧张我就忍不住吃爆米花。
Then comes the second extension. It is the same as just now, except the previous frame's input is the sum of the 2 previously generated videos. Finally, we get a complete video.
我跟我闺蜜看电影就特别有画面感，就你知道吗？一紧张我就忍不住吃爆米花，吃得特别快。
I want to point out something you need to pay attention to, the frame rate. We must set the frame rate to 25. This is basic common sense. Whenever you are dealing with audio parts, whether it is LTX or anything else, we basically set the frame rate to 25. Regarding the extension content, since one extension is 81 frames, and 81 divided by 25 is just over 3 seconds. When you look at the total length of your audio, you should be able to roughly estimate how many extensions are needed to achieve the final result. The English version content is exactly the same as this.
Okay, yeah. I resent you. I love you. I respect you. But you know what? You blew it. And thanks to you.
Now, let's look at the dual-person version. This is relatively more complex, mainly adding audio stitching and masking content. The main model loading is identical. The only thing to note is that you must load the multi-patch here. Previously, for a single person, you would load single. Actually, I'll tell you a secret, using multi for everything works fine too. For the prompt, we simply changed 1 character to 2 characters. The key focus lies in the processing of the audio and the reference image. First, let's look at the audio. We have 2 clips. One is the boy speaking.
Hey, you dropped your, calculus notebook?
And let's listen to the girl speaking.
Oh wow, my mortal enemy Mr. Thompson's problem sets.
For these 2, we first need to perform audio encoding on them, undoubtedly using our audio encoder. Additionally, to combine the final video, we need to stitch them together since it is a dialogue effect. We are assuming the boy speaks first. Then the girl. Similarly, when processing the image, we need an extra step, the mask. You can use the mask editor to edit the masks for the corresponding characters. After that, the processing is slightly more complicated. Let's look at the basic sampling part. First, the 2 audios undergo audio encoding, and then they must be connected to output 1 and output 2 of our audio encoder respectively. This distinguishes them based on the speaker's identity. The 2 masks are connected to mask 1 and mask 2. The rest of the content is actually about the same. Then we get the first audio segment.
Hey, you dropped your...
Since my total audio length is also around 8 seconds, I need to go through 2 extensions. The extension logic is identical to before. It is just that the content connected to this node is a bit more extensive.
Hey, you dropped your, calculus notebook?
Oh wow, my mortal enemy Mr. Thompson's problem set.
The final generated effect is excellent. The workflow for the Chinese dual-person version is basically identical.
小弟弟，有兴趣陪姐姐喝一杯吗？
我其实不太会喝酒。
The scene generated is a bit funny, but the overall video generation quality is very high. It is worth mentioning that the official Infinity Talk version runs extremely fast. You can try it yourself, since it only requires 4 sampling steps. Even though the models feel large, the actual running speed is better than I expected. That is all for today. What are you waiting for? Go ahead and try it yourself. Follow me to become someone who understands AI.